Hey, this is MJ, and in today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how to crochet our snowy season sweater. The yarn that I'm using is Brava Speckle. It's a worsted weight yarn, and I'll be working with the color Plummy Speckle in today's tutorial. You'll need two hook sizes for this pattern. I'm using a 5.5 millimeter and a 4.5 millimeter, and these are Dots crochet hooks from We Crochet. I'll have links for the yarn and the hooks in the description box. Our cardigan and our sweater begin the same way. We'll be working this sweater from the side across, and we're beginning with the cuff. So put a slip knot on your smaller hook, which is the 4.5 millimeter, and we'll begin with a chain of 13. Once you have 13 chains, we're going to work a half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. And work half double crochet stitches across the chain so that you have a total of 12. Once you've worked all the way across and you have a total of 12 half double crochets, we're going to chain one, turn, and this row will be worked in slip stitches. We're going to work in the back loop of the stitch. So going through the back loop only, we'll work a slip stitch. So you're pulling the yarn through and through the loop on your hook. You want to make sure that you aren't pulling these stitches too tight. You just want to keep it nice and loose as you work across. Chain one and turn. So now looking at your stitch this way so you can see the loops, we're going to work half double crochets in the back loop only. So yarn over, going through the back loop only, work a half double through each stitch across. And you're going to notice that this is going to puff that slip stitch row up. It's going to give it a nice knit rib look. The end of the row, we'll chain one and turn, and then we're back to a slip stitch row. So we're going to alternate between a slip stitch row and a half double crochet row. All worked through the back loops only. Chain one and turn, and then we're back to a half double crochet row again. So follow along with your pattern for the size you're working on as to how many rows you need to crochet for your cuff. So I am going to work a total of 27 rows. And I'll show you how to count your rows. So row one is the half double crochet, and then the row that pops up would be row two, row three, row four, row five. So go ahead and work up as many rows as needed, and then we'll meet back up for the next step. Okay, so I've worked a total of 27 rows. And now what we're going to do is chain one, and we'll work across the edge of the row. So you're going to work a single crochet per row. So one for your half double crochet row, one for your slip stitch row. I'm just sort of pushing in between my slip stitch for that row, and I'm gonna work that all the way across. Okay, so I've worked across 27. I'm gonna chain one and turn, but I'm gonna change over to my larger hook, and I'm going to work single crochets across this row on the wrong side. We'll chain one and turn, and I'm going to start with my increase pattern. Now follow along for the size you're working on, because the pattern will be different depending on the size for your increase repeat. So all the sizes will start out with our first increase here, but then follow along for the repeat that you're going to do the increase. So we're going to work a double crochet in your first stitch, and then work another double crochet in the same stitch. Then we can work across the row in double crochet stitches, and we'll end with 2 double crochet in the last stitch. Okay, so in your last stitch, we're going to work 2 double crochet. So we've now increased from 27 to 29 stitches. I'm going to chain one and turn, and this row, when we're on the wrong side, we're going to work a fun little textured stitch that's really easy to create. You're going to start with a half double crochet in the first stitch, and then work a single crochet in the next. So a half double crochet, and then a single crochet, half double crochet, single crochet. And we're going to work that across the row. Okay, so we'll be ending with a half double crochet, chain one and turn. And this row, we're going to work double crochets in every stitch across. So we won't do another increase until row 5 for this size. So we're gonna go ahead and work doubles all the way across. Okay, so I've worked all the way across. We will chain one and turn. Chain one throughout this pattern on the sleeve is not included as a stitch. And we're back to our half double single row. So half double crochet, single crochet, half double crochet, single crochet, single crochet. So all that worked at 29 stitches. So we do an increase up to 29, and then we have 3 rows worked at the 29 stitch mark, and then we'll do another increase. So I'm going to go ahead working this across. Chain one and turn. We're back to a double crochet row, and I'll be doing an increase for this row. So I'm going to work 2 double crochets in the first stitch, and then double crochets in each stitch across, and we'll do 2 in the last stitch. So I'm ending with 2 double crochets in that last stitch. So now I've increased to 31 stitches, and I'm going to continue working across the sleeve in this manner up to a total of 43 stitches. So we need to keep increasing to 43 stitches, and then you want to continue working rows until you have a total of 38 rows. Now that is going to be the length of our sleeve with the cuff. If you want to make any alterations, you'll have some space to do that. So if you need to make a shorter sleeve or longer sleeve once you've increased your number of stitches for the size you're working on, you can always alter the length. This sleeve is going to be approximately, let me just take a look. It's going to be around 18 1/4 with the cuff. So if you need to alter that, just make sure to alter your rows at this point. So I'm going to continue working up my increases and get that I have a total of 38 rows. Okay, so I finished working up my sleeve. I have a total of 38 rows, and you can count by twos from your puffed up row here. It makes it really easy to count. I increased to 43 stitches for this size, and it measures about 13.5 inches, and my length is approximately 18 inches. So for our long cardigan, I'm going to chain out 66, but if you're working on the sweater, you'll be chaining out 40. So what we're going to do is add a chain to the top left side, and then we'll be chaining out with our working yarn to continue working. So let's grab another ball of yarn. And I'm going to put a slip knot on my hook. I'm going to join up to the corner. So for the sweater, you can chain out 40 and fasten off, and for the cardigan, I'm going to chain out a total of 66 and fasten off. And you could do any combination of this for the length that you would prefer the cardigan, but just be aware that the math and your stitch counts are going to line up with the amounts that I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and chain out 66. I'm going to fasten off, and this will be set up to continue working right across the chain. We're going to come back over to our working yarn. So for the sweater, we're going to come back over to the working yarn. We're going to chain out 41. So we're doing one extra chain for our turning chain. So we will actually be working across 40 and 40 across the other chain. And once you've worked out your chain of either 41 or 67, we're going to work back across the chain in double crochets, and we'll be going into the second chain from the hook. So just the one chain will be the turning chain. You can yarn over and then begin to work double crochets across the chain. It is a good idea to count. Make sure that you do have 40 or 66 working across this chain. So I'm going to go ahead and work that across. Okay, so I've worked across the chain, and now we're coming to the sleeve section. We're going to continue just working across. And when you get to your other chain, continue working across that chain in either your 40 or 66 stitches, depending on the length you're working on. So I'm going to go ahead and complete this row, just working double crochets in every stitch, and then I'll meet you up at the end of the row. Okay, so I've worked all the way across. And depending on whether you have worked across your 40 chains or your 66, I'll give you your stitch count based on those two lengths. So if you have chained out 40 on each side, your total for this size is going to be 123 stitches. Now, go ahead and look at your pattern to make sure that you do have the correct stitch count for the size you're working on. And if you're working on the longer cardigan, you will have, for this size, 175 stitches. So it's a good idea to make sure you are on track with your stitch count. And now we're going to get back into our pattern. So we'll chain one and turn. And this row will be our half double crochet, single crochet row. So half double crochet, single crochet, half double crochet, single crochet. And now you'll want to follow along with your pattern for the size you're working on to see how many rows you need to do in total. So for this particular size, I worked a total of 22 rows, and then I finished on the right side with a single crochet row. I wanted to make sure to end with that single crochet because it makes a nice finished edge for the sweater. So then you're going to fold it in half, and we're going to slip stitch our back and our front together. So here's the back, which I've already done. And I slip stitched it together a total of 48 stitches. So it's a good idea just to count your stitches and mark off your 48th stitch. And I will show you how to do the slip stitch on the front. So the front, I'm going to leave it a little bit deeper neck. So I'm going to go with 38 stitches. And if you leave your yarn attached and don't fasten off at the end of your rows when you've worked both sides of your sweater, you'll have the yarn ready to use for slip stitching. So now I'm going to count and mark so I know how far to slip stitch. So there's 38. I'll just mark the next stitch so I know to work right up to the stitch before the marker. And now to slip stitch, I'm just finishing that stitch off with a single crochet. I'm going to chain one, and we're going to work through the back loop only. We're coming over to the other side, going through the back loop only, and pull through to crochet that slip stitch. So back loop and the back loop. Okay, so it's making a nice flat slip stitch seam. Okay, so I've slip stitched all the way up to the marker. I'm going to remove that now. So we have more coverage on the back, less on the front. But before you weave in any tails, I suggest trying it on to make sure that you're happy, because you can always easily remove a few stitches from the front if you need them, remove a few from the back, or even close it up a little bit more if you prefer. I'm going to seam the sides together. I already did this side. So you're seaming the side of the sweater and the sleeve. So what you'll do is you want to take a piece of yarn that's going to be about double the length that you need. This way you won't run out when you're sewing this together. You can start here or at the cuff, whatever you prefer. I'm going to join on into the corner. And then we are just going to whip stitch this together. So I'm going to go ahead and seam this all going right down to the cuff. So once you get all the way down, you can fasten this off with a bit of a shorter tail, and then you can weave it in. I like to try everything on before I finish weaving all my tails, just in case I want to make any changes. Okay, so once you have your sides and your sleeves seamed, your front and back slip stitched together, we'll be adding the band next, but I do suggest trying it on. Make sure that you are happy with the fit. If anything needs to be adjusted, if you needed, let's say you found your body a little too big, it'd be really easy to pull back some rows and make that adjustment. Or if you needed it a little bit bigger, you could always pull out these seams, add on some extra rows if you need them. So just make sure, try it on before proceeding so that you're happy with your finished sweater. Next, I'm going to add a band to the bottom. We're going to join on at a seam. And even this stage, you can make modifications to make the sweater a little bit longer, a little bit shorter if you need to make those adjustments. I just want a fairly thin band going around the bottom. So I'm going to put a slip knot on my hook. I'm going to join in at the seam with a slip stitch. And I'm going to single crochet around. Now I'm going to single crochet 2 for a double crochet row and 1 for the half double single crochet row. 2 for my double crochet row, and then the other row just 1 single crochet. So that's the way I'm going to work this. Working around at the slip stitch joins, I'll do a single crochet for the slip stitch, and I am using my smaller hook for this. So now once you get all the way around, you're going to slip stitch to join. And next we're going to chain for the band. Now I just want a smaller band, so I'm only going to do half of the cuff. So the cuff we did 12 stitches, I'm gonna go with 6. But you can switch this out if you want to add a little bit more length to the sweater. So I'm gonna go ahead and chain 7. And I'll be crocheting in the second chain from the hook. So that's why I have 1 extra than the stitch count that I want. And the ribbing pattern is going to be the same as the cuff. So we're going to work half double crochets. So in the second chain from the hook, a half double crochet and a half double crochet in each chain. So we're going to skip over our first stitch that we slip stitched into. Our half double crochet row is going to account for that stitch. Now we will slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. And then we will work 2 more rows. So we're going to turn. We skip over those 2 slip stitches that we just made, and then we're going to go through the back loop, working slip stitches. So this is just like that cuff that we started with. Chain 1 and turn, and then a half double crochet through the back loop of each stitch. You really want to make sure you stay on track with your stitches. You want to count them as you go. In that 6. What I find some people will make a mistake at this section is they may slip stitch back down into the same row, and then you'll end up with too many rows. Or if you skip this slip stitch and go into the next two, then you would be having too few stitches worked around. So you really want to make sure you take a look at your stitches. This one already has a slip stitch, so we need to slip stitch into the next two. Okay, and then turn. We skip those two slip stitches and then work slip stitches through the back loop. Chain one and turn. So this is going to just be continued all the way around. So we have a row made per stitch worked around the bottom. Now I'm using the smaller hook, so it's going to slightly pull in the band. It's not going to be a really snug band, but it is going to pull it in a little bit. If you wanted it even more pull, take a look at the photos of me modeling it. But if you need it pulled in a little more, you could always do a small, even go down a smaller hook. That would make it a little tighter. If you don't want any pulling, you could use the same size hook that we used for the rest of the pattern. So that's just a little personal preference, an easy way to modify. So I'm going to complete, the band will take a little bit of time to work around. So I'm going to go ahead and complete that off camera, and then once I get all the way around, I'll meet you up again. Okay, so I've worked all the way around and I've ended with a half double crochet row. I'm going to slip stitch just down to the base, and then I am going to slip stitch the band together to finish it off. And I'm just going to go through the one loop on the one side and just finish off with a slip stitch. You can fasten that off, and I would try it on again. Just make sure everything is good, and then you can weave in your tails. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and tap the bell to stay updated on all my new videos and tutorials. Make sure to check the description box below this video for all the links. Thanks so much, guys. Have an awesome day.